All right. We are here. We're going to do just a short 20-minute missive. We're just going to have a good, fun conversation. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, how you want, tell the people who you are, explain your name. It's a whole thing. Um, and you just are kind of getting out of this crazy world of college athletics. So talk us through that.
Yes, hello, thanks. Awesome to be here. Geoff Carlston, been a college coach for 20 plus years. Was a high school coach, club coach, D2 coach, and was at Ohio University and Ohio State over the last 15 plus years, and also a ski bum from Colorado and at some point, and grew up in Minnesota. So I am officially retired, moving back to Minnesota to be with family. Excited about that, nervous about that. And founder of Epic Journey Leadership, which is what brought you and I together, along with some coaching connections we had. So
Oh, we could
love the
say who.
conversations we've had. Yeah.
We could say Colleen Munson. I mean, I love that woman with all of my heart and soul. And so she was the one. She connected us, and she is. We have to give her the
Yes,
props.
Colleen was the bridge, and her and I have known each other forever, and we've had great conversations. She actually has connections to my wife's family back 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So yes, we'll give props to Colleen. She deserves it.
Yeah, she's amazing. Okay, so you're just sort of getting out of the actual crazy wild world of athletics, of college athletics, and you're kind of going down this path. It gives you the freedom to move back to Minnesota, and I know that's
Yep.
really important to you and your family. And you and I have just been talking over the last several months about just the various things that have gone into the climate that is college athletics. And one of them, and kind of how that has fueled your want to do a little bit of similar work that I'm doing. Like we're digging the same ditch, essentially.
Right,
I
right.
love collaborating with people who are digging the same ditch. Um, can we talk about, we've talked about surveys, and I have been a very vocal opponent of anonymous student athlete surveys and apps like Real Response. And I'm just wondering, as somebody, and only share what you're comfortable sharing, obviously, but someone who's really just kind of gone, through this in the last
Yeah.
little bit. Can you
Yeah.
talk about some of the I think I don't think administrators fully understand the unintended consequences, but I'm dealing with coaches all the time that like have PTSD, not to overstate it, truly,
Right.
like have endured trauma at the hands of these surveys with their lack of nuance. So I'm just going to let you kind of take that where you will.
Absolutely. No, I think, again, this comes from what are the intentions? I think the intentions are in the right space, right? How do you got to get some honest feedback in one way or another. To me, it feels a very depersonalized and impersonal, in a job that I think that we all love what we do because it is personal and there's passion and there's impact and transformation. Um, that feels these surveys, I can speak from my personal experiences and like you, just in talking to coaches at all levels, all sports, it feels very transactional and it feels counterintuitive to anything that represents trust, right? It's secretive, it's anonymous. There, most importantly to me, and I think most people, that there's no growth moment, right? There's no it's very difficult to be able to take any sort of feedback and go and make it personal and figure out, okay, how do I get better? And it's coming from a place, in my opinion, where um, it's a Likert scale. It's a bullet. It's a dot. And as any of us know, coaching, there's so much nuance in what we do. There's moments, there's feelings, there's highs, there's lows, and to crystallize it down into a 3-page document based off of yes nos, or rate this on a top 1 through 5 scale feels, for most coaches, I would say, feels very it just breaks the trust of anything. And that's the most important thing, I think, as a coach, is how do you build trust? How do you have breakthroughs? You have to get uncomfortable to be able to make those breakthroughs, do something that you haven't done before. And so for every, five or five, six, seven, eight players that you get connected that are transformed, there's going to be some that don't like it. It's the first time they've ever been uncomfortable. For many times, it's the first time student athletes have failed is in college. They've been the best at what they do, and all of a sudden they're coming and they're surrounded by 18 other players that are the best at what they do, and playing time and injuries and homesickness. And so I also think the timing of when these are given are incredibly important, and in fall sports, they're typically given at the end of the season. If you had a great season, they're probably going to be a little bit better. If you had a little bit of a rough season, they're not going to be as strong. But also you're dealing with, five, six freshmen who've only been in college for 4 months, right? They've never even experienced a spring season if you're looking at volleyball. So I just think there's the intention. I think everyone understands the intention. Um, the the damage that's done to cultures of teams and the coaches um, really end up trying to coach to get good surveys as opposed to coaching from a place of authenticity where you can make really incredible impacts and change lives. I think that's been the quiet fallout from these. And they've taken something that's very passionate and personal and depersonalized it and made it transactional, in my opinion.
Yeah, like they're reductive, right? The word that, like,
Right.
when you were kind of trying to think of a word, I was thinking they're so reductive. And something that I say a lot, I think that coaching is it's such a creative, and you sort of alluded to it big time there. It's such a creative endeavor, right? And fear kills creativity. It just does. And not that you're shaking in your boots, but you said it, like, you end up coaching to the thing. It's no different than teaching to the test, right?
Right.
And there's a lot to be said about the data behind our educational system in this country versus other countries who are doing it different with standardized testing. With us having standardized testing, I think you're kind of getting a similar result. And I think it's in the quest for administrators to have this evaluation tool and have it be black and white. The problem is, and this is, I would love for you to expand on this if you could, just this thought that I'm going to throw out there. When we try to make human stuff black and white, boy, it really ends up backfiring. And I think that's something that you feel as a coach. What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, dichotomy, that's just not how life works and certainly not how coaching works. I mean, we're not crunching numbers here and, doing tax forms. We're transforming lives through a very intense stage, in a very intense time of people's lives. And that's one of the reasons why I think most coaches love it because it can be transformative. I mean, I had a player 3 weeks ago came up and we just had coffee together and she literally said, you saved my life through this process that we went through. And those are the things we don't need it every day, but man, you can get one comment from a player and it's so sustaining and life-giving for coaches and teachers. Anyone working with people that coming from a place of heart. And so I do think, when you start thinking about the opposite of that is dichotomy and impersonalization. And I also think, it's one of those things that it's important to note, statistically that I think so many, such a higher percentage of female sports um are being the complaints are coming a lot, or the conversations coming a lot from that side of teams at the expense of like what's going on with the men. Certainly are struggling, right? They're certainly having issues as well. And why are we not, I'd love to be able to like hear some feedback from some of the men's teams and some of those guys who are maybe learn like, okay, I don't want to complain. I don't want to talk about these sort of things. I think that's a little part of it that doesn't get talked about enough too, is, what's going on with men's basketball and football. Why are they not speaking and presenting as many concerns through some of these surveys too? Um, but I think that it makes it something that's very transformational. It makes it transactional. And I love your word um, in terms of just breaking it down to simple pieces that really don't tell the full story.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think you kind of said this too, like, even if most of the answers are great, even if you have just this like tiny, small, few of them that are a little bit off or they're negative or whatever,
Right.
you don't know who said what. You can't even circle back. You can't even repair. You can't even seek to understand more. And you're certainly not going to understand the full scope of where that negative comment was, your negative rating is coming from based on this report because they're anonymous. And
Right.
and I think it's tricky, just kind of playing devil's advocate for the other side. Like, I think, I do think, I don't want anybody to be confused. As a part of my model for culture, the feedback loop is all important. And I think in sport, we do it wrong a lot, where it goes coach to player, upperclassmen to freshmen all the time, right? And I think really healthy cultures thrive when that feedback loop is closed. So we have to
Right.
get feedback back, but not this kind of feedback. That's the problem. But that being said, administrators still, there has to be a pathway so that when the coach is going off the rails, and we know this happens, I've been a part of it. I'm sure you've seen it up close. When they do, like, there has to be some avenue. This is just not it.
Right.
This is just not the avenue.
Right. I think, this is the conversation I think you and I are trying to start is what's the path? What's the productive action here, right? I think, you know, one of my friends brought up the idea that when something is brought up and that's a concern, a lot of times it's a feeling, right? It's a strong feeling that came up. Perhaps it's after a match, end of the season, whatever it may be. And I think there's a lot of value to saying, okay, good. Let's follow up on this. Can you give me some more information? Give me some facts, right? What happened? What was said? When can you give me the circumstances? What were the dates? Whatever the case may be, it doesn't have to be huge details, but let's get some information, some real information so we can. I think a lot of times as coaches, part of the concern is not coaches, teachers, professors feel this. It's a lot of different avenues. Um, how do we take feelings and get some real information so we can actually create a path of growth, right? Let's
It's
let's
the
figure out a
growth,
way.
right?
How do we fix this? How do we build bridges? That's what we do. We're educators, teachers, coaches, and without facts and information, and let's dive into a little bit. I think that becomes stunted, and so the biggest concern is it's feelings on a impersonal scale that's anonymous, and there's no follow-up, there's no information.
Yep.
You don't know if it was a freshman or a senior. Sometimes you don't know if they played or didn't play.
Right.
And so I think, how do we gather information? It takes more time. It just does. It takes more energy.
Yep.
It necessitates the leaders, whether it's an AD or a coach or a CEO, to dive a little bit deeper. And that's what we need to be doing and somehow get to that place where we can get some feelings and facts and then start bridging and having a dialogue that's actually growth oriented.
I think you just nailed it. I think that's at the heart of like when I'm thinking about surveys or real response, that's kind of at the core of my opposition is I know that trust is the one through line, and you said it. It's the one through line to all of team culture. It literally touches everything. And at its very best, it can do nothing to help trust. It can only do nothing, but almost always it's going to at least hurt trust, even if it's just a little bit. It's going to chip away at trust between the coach and the player, right? So, but the second part of that, my second biggest opposition subject is that I can't grow from a survey. I can't.
Right.
I'm going to be hurt. I'm going to be nervous about what if that happens again. It might. What I had somebody, and you can go back on my YouTube channel and look at this conversation I had with a coach that I worked with, who went through a horrible time with surveys, and she ended up, you already kind of said it, coaching to the survey in a way that made her inauthentic and
Right.
very ineffective as a leader. And I think that is the thing that's really getting missed. So, okay, let's go here. If you're an administrator, say that instead of your organization that you're kind of launching and or have launched, but kind of going into full time now, which I want to have you talk about before we leave this conversation.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
instead say you're going to go be an AD. What do you, because I have some thoughts on this. I don't know how practical they are, but
Right.
what do you do? Like, just pretend you decided I'm going to go be an AD. What do you do with
Right.
this?
Right. First of all, I mean, I've said this to every AD I've ever talked to. Like, they have a very hard job. I mean, it's people said, "Do you want to be an AD?" I'm like, "No way, no way would I want to be an AD for the reasons, they have to deal with the stuff every head coach has to deal with, and then some. Beyond that, constituents, how do the president and their leadership, and also, so it's a very tough job. So, I mean, I think it's important to acknowledge that. The thing I would say is it's very similar to an AD. Let's just say they have 12 or 15 head coaches and a few support staff that they see right underneath them. What if that group was allowed to do the same thing? And you get feedback that four of your 15 coaches really gave you a negative response. And now it's up to I don't know, maybe it's the chancellor or someone. And now you have to hear the feedback, but you have to go into the head coaches meeting or whatever meetings you have. And four of the 15 people there who you have no idea who they are, and you don't, so everyone's guilty of that in some way. And it's very difficult, I think. How do you run the department? How do you navigate that personally? Because it is personal. Let's be honest. Coaches take, and ADs or anyone takes this to heart. That is, I mean, it's not like whatever, I don't care. It hurts coaches and head coaches' hearts and their souls.
And if it doesn't, can I just jump in? If it doesn't, Jeff, you're a sociopath. Literally, that's
Absolutely.
the
And
definition.
you're in the wrong profession. You need to
Exactly.
go do something different.
Yep.
And so to think that coaches don't feel this deeply is completely off. So as an AD, I would ask the leaders of athletic departments and companies to think about, how would you feel if this happened? And it's just a natural human reaction. If you care about your job, if you care about the student athletes, which I believe 99% of head coaches are in it for the right reasons, and they want to grow and they understand that this is a part of the job. Um, and then all of a sudden you have this anonymous survey that 1/3 or however, and you have no ability to navigate it, but yet you need to go coach your team, or you need to go work with your coaches on some deeper level. Because if you're not doing this job with heart, you are in the wrong position. You need to go do
Yep.
something different as well. So I think as ADs, and I think they know this in some ways. I don't know what they talk about in their conventions, but it's such a, somehow we've gotten to the point where it's very, how do you stay out of social media? How do you stay out of that target? How do you get your next job? And a lot of it is, the optics of leadership is not in the right spot. And so, meaning there's not a lot of reward for taking care of your head coaches, right? In the sense of, that's not the most important thing. It's bringing more money. It's bringing fundraising. It's um, staying off of the social media crosshairs, whatever that may be. And so for me, is how do we bring heart back into this? That's why we all got into it. We know it's becoming a little more transactional, a lot more transactional with NIL and all these other things. So I think that heart equity and bringing the heart and that connection and trust back into the dynamic is incredibly important. And these surveys are the opposite.
Yep.
So how do we dive in and actually have real conversations early, like every summer before the fall student athletes come? How do we sit down with the ADs, with the leaders, with the coach, with the student athletes, and have conversations? Because it's gonna be hard.
Yep.
Being in college is not easy. Being a student athlete is not easy. You're going to go through some struggles, whether it's a sprained ankle, relationships, homesickness, sitting for the first time in your life. And I think, most ADs have never been coaches, and that's not their fault. And so how do we get together and share stories and share experiences in a real way, so that we win, not if, when struggles come up, we can have a conversation because we have some foundation of trust built through those dialogue.
Yeah, I think that there's so many things that you just said there. I think that there's overwhelm from that position too. And
Hmm.
just like coaches have, there's a lot of fear right now as leaders just in leading people, and they have different fears, right?
Right.
But they still fear, and what they're doing as they're leading a department is more creative than I think we often assume as well. And so
Right. Right.
creativity or fear kills creativity, right? I think I think at the, what I hear you saying, and this is absolutely agree with it. I think that it's important that AD, your sport administrator or athletic director, whatever position, I think that they have to have the ability to garner feedback from your student athletes in case the student athlete just really can't come to a coach, because there are still coaches out there. We coach how we were coached, and until we have a thriving um, system of coach development and professionalization, we're not professionals by the definition. You don't have to be licensed to be a college coach. And so as long as that is true, we have to have that ability to have your sport admins getting that feedback. I think it has to be through relationship. You said bring the heart equity back in, and that's what it is. And I know that that sounds impossible. If you're an AD listening to this, you're like, you all don't understand the climate. I do. I really do. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you, as somebody who's talked to you a lot and who talks to a lot of other head coaches, the thing that I hear coaches screaming for the most is they need a, a more relationship from their athletic director. That's the thing
Yeah.
that has really silently gone away in the last 10 to 15 years as the model has shifted more to business. And
Right.
as those ADs have become less and less former coaches, the relationship is just not, it's transactional. And I think
Yeah.
that's the answer. I don't know how to formalize that. I don't know how to put it in your business spreadsheet, but if you look in the corporate world, they're even getting away from anonymous surveys for their
Right.
performance evaluations.
Right. Yeah. And it, it really costs $0. It's cost
Yes.
time, right?
Yeah.
Walking
Which,
down the hall,
yeah.
checking in with your coach who's struggling, who's lost 3 or 4 games in a row,
Yep.
or who just lost their best player, or whatever the case may be, or something's happening with their kids. You know, it is a 24/7 job,
Absolutely.
and so is being an AD, and in some ways so this is about leadership as well, right? It's just leaders are isolated. And I can tell you, I work with a lot of head coaches as well. And I've been a head coach for 20 some years, and it's the word that just is isolating.
Yep.
Who do you don't want to bring this back home? You lean on your assistant coaches as much as you can. The people we really need to know and feel connected to are the ADs,
Yep.
right? And that can be done through, yes, certainly getting paid, and your contracts and all that, and how that is handled is a huge piece of it. But more so, just send a text after a big
Yep.
win, or more importantly, after a tough loss.
Yep.
You know, um, this is going to become more and more and more important, not just for ADs and head coaches, but through CEOs. Um, People will stay if they feel connected. People will not leave, even for a decent amount of money, if they feel there's community, they feel valued.
Yep.
People don't want to transfer. Like, they don't really want to transfer. There's a lot that goes into it. And so I think, and head coaches want to feel belonging as well.
Yep.
We want to feel connected to the AD. We want to feel connected to our school. And more and more and more, there's a few out there that do. There's some great ADs out there. There are some really great ADs out there. And if you have one, by the way, if you're a head coach, stay. Don't
No matter
leave.
what, don't
Don't
leave.
leave. Don't leave. But I think ADs, there's so much pressure in the administrative side of
Yep.
athletics now. The optics are are in my opinion not even about leadership. It's about, and I think ADs know this and they feel this, and they're isolated as well.
Yep.
And so my call to action is, the closest thing an AD has to being an AD, frankly, are their head coaches. So how cool would that be to be able to sit down and actually share those fears and
Yep.
concerns, and the feeling of isolation that really only leaders feel at a high level. And so, yeah, I think there's a better way. I think we know that. This is an easy way, in my opinion. It's a bit of a lazy way to get
Yep.
feedback, because it takes low energy and it's there and someone else can read it and
It's
so
a
I think
cover
we
your
have
ass. It feels very cover
to,
your ass.
yes. And
But
I
it
think
does actual destruction to the team's culture is the problem.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's been, I think there's a better way to do it. It's going to take more time. It's going to take heart, and it's going to take, some caring communication and conversation. And so, um, the best ADs were as head coaches across the country are being asked to adapt. That's the word. Like you got to adapt or die. You got to, you have to do these sort of things. And even more so now with the legislation and the transactionality and the money and all that. So do ADs. Like, and ADs need to adapt, and they're being asked to adapt in certain ways. Can ADs in leadership and athletics adapt in a way that comes from a place of love,
Yeah.
right? And heart equity. And it costs very little money, but it does cost time. And
Yeah.
so to me, the ROI on diving in, you want to use the ROI of heart equity is off the charts. It is off the charts.
But it's just like, and I think the problem is, I think what you're saying is exactly spot on. I think where the failing is on that is it's like, it makes me think of Simon Sinek's The Infinite Game,
Mm,
right? It takes longer. It takes longer to build a sustainable team culture. It's so tempting to have the ends justify the means, um and you might make quicker gains. It's like fear-based coaching
yeah,
in the short term. Oh yeah, you can fear some people into some really high achievement, but it'll be very short term. And to
yeah,
do this well, you're not going to see the returns for a little while, and it's really really hard. It's a lot, but it is more fulfilling. It's kind of, I talk about winning deep all the time versus winning shallow, right? But I want to put a stat just for the people to what you said. People will stay or, for less money in a good culture. Just so people, if they haven't heard this, in the corporate world, there's actually data, and people will turn down 30% more pay to stay in a good culture or leave a bad culture for a 30% pay reduction. That's
wow,
just, and that's in the corporate world. Like,
yeah,
and so I know that people are worried about NIL and the transfer portal and all that. And I don't think it's not nothing. You're not going to overcome a kid getting at 18, 19, 20 years old, getting $100,000. That's not 30%, right? But
right,
you can overcome a lot if you can truly create an environment where you're belonging. But that's really hard when you, as their leader of that program, don't feel that. Like, to your point,
right,
you're not feeling that sense of belonging and safety from your own direct
yeah,
leader. And I think that's happening more than people realize.
yeah. I mean, I don't have the data off the top of my head. But I've talked to 50, 60, 70 coaches, head coaches, just in the last 2 years, through my groups and through, Epic Journey Leadership, and just friendships, right? And it is coaches for the most part, um, feel very isolated, feel like they're just okay at everything, especially if you have kids or you're married. Man, you're missing your kid's baseball game to go,
Yeah.
to go coach, and we love it and it's worth it. And it's the beauty of this job. It's the beauty of coaching is that um the highs are highs and the transformation of people is a forever thing, and that's where we come from. And I think that's why most coaches do what they do. And the common theme with coaches is it's not aligned anymore. It doesn't feel that way anymore. And I think that can be, I don't think coaches are staying up at night because of their budgets. I don't believe coaches are staying up at night because of NIL or any of I think coaches are staying up at night because they're afraid of losing their jobs, or they don't feel connected, or they love what they do and at the same time are wondering if this is even sustainable. Am I going to have a job? All those sort of things. And that's about belonging,
Yep.
right? And that's about being connected, and that's about feeling valued, and having purpose. I think that's why most coaches, if they're struggling, that's where it's coming from. Yeah, the transactionality that's happening is not right. It's not ideal. I don't believe that's what's keeping people up at night. What's keeping people up at night is the heart equity or lack thereof.
Yep. Gosh, I couldn't agree more. It's so good to kick these ideas around. All right.
Absolutely.
Before we jump off, want to be mindful of their viewers' time. Talk about your entity, Epic Journey Leadership. Can you just talk a little bit about what you're hoping to do, like how people can get a hold of you if they're interested in working with you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I've been doing it for a few years, um, and now want to be going into this full time back in Minnesota. And so working with CEOs, working with head coaches of all sports, work with some professional athletes, some professional teams, really any leadership position, working one-on-one with the leader, and love working with developing culture. The things that you and I have done, that head coaches do, navigating conflict, navigating relationships, trust, and doing it. How do we bring that winning, that championship mindset into not only athletics, but into businesses, right? Um, you have young people who are working with people who've been around for 20, 30 years. How do you create bridges where um, there's a connection, a community, in spite of seeing the world in very different ways? And so, um, yeah, I love it. It's been really, really cool to be able to take the 20 some years of college coaching and bring that into corporate worlds and organizations. And I still love working with head coaches though, of all different sports. So yeah, my email is Carpe Carlston, CARPE, and my last name is Carlston, CARLSTON at gmail.com. And or you can give me a call, 614-352-9138. Most people know that you can find a way to get a hold of me, but yeah, it's been really cool. I'm excited about it, and it's been really cool talking to you about how can we work together and
Yep.
bring some productive actions, some better ways of doing some of these things.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the just kind of always say playing in the playground. Anytime I
Yeah,
have these kind of conversations, it just kind of helps get the juices flowing. So I appreciate
play in
it.
the
And I'm
sandbox.
yeah, exactly. I will definitely put your contact information in the stuff as we post like little, excerpts from this and on the YouTube page and stuff like that. And I'll make sure you get this video so you can kind of put it up there as you're sort of building your infrastructure. But I just
Yeah,
appreciate
good.
kind of getting to pick your brain because you're really, really just fresh from the front lines. And it's, humans are humans.
Yeah,
It's everything we're talking about. Your student athletes need exactly what you need, exactly what your ADs need. They're feeling isolated too. And I just hope that if nothing else, maybe a coach can just take this video and slide it under the door of their sport administrator. Maybe it helps, right? And run away, run.
yeah. I mean, it's such a great profession. It really is. And we all coach because we had great experiences in
Yeah.
college, or some way sport has impacted us in a very positive way, being a part of a team. There's so many. It's such an awesome space to be in, and so I think yes, things are changing. Yes, it can get better. And so, I love playing the sandbox with you and with others, helping to navigate. How do we help leaders get away from isolation, get away
Yes.
from fear, help the student athletes, help the ADs, everyone wants things, wants to feel connected. So yeah, it's been really great to talk with you about this. So I'm looking forward to doing some more.
Yeah, same here. Same here. We'll just keep having to give, shouts out to Colleen because she got us connected. So it's
Yes.
all on her. She's just one of the best. I love her
Yes,
dearly.
she
But
is.
thank you, Geoff, so much. This has been fun, and I'm sure we'll kind of do it again.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks,